What's up, y'all? It's your boy Carlos, back with the Friday edition of the Carlos Digital Show. Thank you for joining me. Thanks to everyone who's been keeping up with the show in the past couple of weeks and giving me some good feedback. I really appreciate that. Lots to talk about on the show today, particularly on a movie that came out on HBO Max called The Batman. Have you heard of it? I think I spent some money to make sure you knew it exists. As you guys know, I was never gonna pay for this movie because not because I'm a hater, but because I disagree with Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada being the people who run Warner Brothers and DC Films. Perhaps Warner Brothers of old and DC Films of old, as there seems to be some change in the horizon potentially coming. So looking forward to that. But today, let's talk about the Batman. I will discuss quite a couple things. We will talk about the movie, where it succeeds, where it fails, and I will give you my personal take on everything I can think of for the next little while for where the movie is. You're going to see me jump back and forth in my opinion in terms of what works and what doesn't work from the perspective of the creative choices and from the perspective of the business choices that they made to put this movie out there. Both of them are not completely independent, but for the most part, they are quite the opposite. I think that the film itself, it's a film that I enjoyed. I liked it. I thought it was a movie that clearly shows someone that put effort and has respect for film as a language. This is not a candy cane of a movie for quick consumption and then disregard. This is a movie that has replay value. I think that from the cinematography to the score to the script of the film, you can see that this is a movie that takes itself seriously. And what's important about it is that it shows the strength of DC as a brand, that you can do this. This is in the rich history of the comic books, you have reference of this being possible. So to me, that's part of the enjoyment that I get out of it. That it shows an alternative method of providing comic book entertainment by respecting these, let's call it cinematic language, by presenting something to you that is not made out of very specific cookie cutter formula. So that's definitely a positive. Yeah, the movie perhaps was submitted to or subject to test screenings and all these like procedures that they want to follow. But the truth is that the movie itself, it's something that provides what the DC brand can provide. These types of films are interesting. They're intriguing to me. They are well made, and you should, perhaps give Matt Reeves more credit than you have given him so far, because the movie, he put some effort into it. There's no doubt about it. He spent quite a last maybe 4 or 5 years of his career working on this film. So you can thank him for giving you a film that has some meat to it. If you noticed, this film, the way it came to be, obviously is not the preferred way, but the end result, I think it's satisfying. The film is a detective noir story in which you see a Batman on year 2, I suppose, where he already knows James Gordon, follow the clues that Riddler leaves for him, and that reveal things ultimately about Gotham City's past and about Bruce Wayne's past, about the Waynes as a whole, and about the way Gotham City is organized as a, I guess, entity from the judicial and criminal side. So it's interesting. I think the movie has a lot of influences from the comics. Matt, it's either a fan or it's someone that did his homework in terms of reading comics. There's tons of reference to multiple things that have to do with the comics. But to me, this movie, it's sort of a combination of some classic films, like perhaps, especially the beginning, like Taxi Driver, where Bruce Wayne is narrating his views on society and criminals in this case. But it also has elements at the same time. The narrating style has elements of Batman Year One, the Frank Miller novel. So it's definitely influenced by the comics. It's definitely a movie that has its own style. I think that's pretty cool. Honestly, that's the kind of thing I like to see and I want to see from DC. Be bold and take take the source material and then do something with it. That's not to say that the movie is 100% loyal to the source material, but it does it in a way that it has some, I guess you can call them Easter eggs, but it also tells its own story. So I don't have a problem with taking liberties and just going wherever the storyteller wants to go. That's never a problem. It should never be a problem. So that's that part's pretty good. The movie, you see it from the beginning. Take on this dark, almost gloomy sensation where Gotham City is a place where there's like constant rain and where um, you are seeing not by design, because the fact that it rains all the time, or that has been raining at that particular time where the Riddler's plans are executed, has something to do with the end of the film. But the sense of atmosphere that you get from this movie, it's part of its personality. So for that, I commend it quite well. The score, it's funny. The score, I listened to the score prior to watching the movie. I didn't think much of it. The person that does the score for these movies for Matt Reeves, I think it's the gentleman's name escapes me, but it's a sort of very rhythmic type of a score, so a little bit different. But in comparison, I guess it reminds me a little bit of the Assassin's Creed soundtrack, where this sort of like rhythmic uh, harmony carries over the film, and it shows up at important moments that help you to continue to carry the story. So in the context of the movie, I thought it worked well. It shows up at the beginning and multiple times when it has to do with the Batman finding out something, or the Batman giving perspective on what's happening. So that part's great. um, Obviously, this movie was 3 hours long, which I thought at first maybe it would feel long because Matt Reeves has that style. If you watch his Apes films, they have this like extremely long, slow burn sensation. This movie wasn't as much. I didn't think I was. There's room to breathe and to hear, the Riddler, breathe in and breathe out, and you see little things that are sort of extended to let the movie breathe. But I think it's acceptable. It's okay. It works. Um, it helps bring in the tension in the times that have intense tension. So I like that part. The actors, they all do a good job. I feel Robert Pattinson, who I wasn't too sure at first, he does a good job as Batman, even as Bruce Wayne, the sort of non-playboyish Bruce Wayne. May change in future movies based on the ending of this movie, but the sort of what they were calling the Kurt Cobain Bruce Wayne. I can see how that works in this movie, and it works for the story that he's trying to tell. So he does a good job. I think as Batman, he's okay. I'm not crazy about the bat suit. I think the cowl is maybe a little bit too much a reference to Adam West, but because the movie has a very darker tone, it doesn't really you can't really see too much about how the leather sort of curves or anything like that. So it's okay, I suppose. Zoe Kravitz does an okay job as Catwoman. Selena Kyle, being a year one Selena Kyle, um, she does okay job. I felt that she handled the role okay. Um, I believe what's his name, Colin Farrell. Is that his name? I can't remember. The guy that plays the Penguin, he does a good job. I thought it was a good character. James Gordon also pretty decent character. He reminds me of the Felix Leiter from the 007 films. It's the same type of role where he is there to stand up to the Batman at times, but he also like supports him and helps him in his war on crime. So good job on those guys. Paul Daniels, the Riddler, definitely sort of an interesting take. So that's one of the parts that I found quite interesting, is where Matt Reeves takes Riddler as a character, makes him into a sort of incel, internet fringe character where you have this guy that's obsessed with or has some sort of personality supposedly disorder where he needs attention, he will need credit, which is part of a lot of people identify the Riddler or the modern Riddler as. But you get this sort of like super creep vibe, and the fact that he had followers online and people giving tips about detonators and people that help him carry a plan at the end. It says a lot about society and these type of characters that, because of the internet, have started to show up. So that part is interesting, an interesting sort of reflection on society as it is today. So the Riddler, very interesting. It's a good way to present them, and he's obviously not someone that would be a physical threat to Batman or to anyone, but he is creepy enough and plans things well ahead of time that you can see how he could be an adversary to, especially to a young Batman. So the guy did a good job. I felt he does come across as creepy and weird, and then at the end, when you see what he really looks like and what he's really like, it's it makes you feel kind of sad for that person. So that was cool. In general, the movie is well made. I think the movie, a lot of people don't like hearing about this, but I think the movie does have some studio interference. I was always concerned how there were reports that the studio wanted to give Jonah Hill whatever role he wanted, whether it was, I assume it was not any role, but it could have been any of the sort of mafia type bosses. So he could have been Penguin, Maroni, Falcone, or maybe even the Riddler. I'm not really sure, but they did give him that, so I was so suspicious. And the movie itself, it's clearly a detective noir story, but maybe the last 20 minutes of the movie makes a turn where it becomes a little bit upbeat and positive and not representative of detective noir story. It becomes more of a hopeful and optimistic look, where Batman results in kind of making the claim that he has to inspire people and be a hopeful symbol for the people of Gotham. So that part I'm perfectly okay with that. There's no problem with that. That's what the storyteller wants to go for it, and more power to him or her. So it's not a big deal. But because of the history with this studio about trying to sell things in a certain way to the audience, I got a little bit suspicious that maybe that was not the ending that Matt Reeves wanted to go for. There's no doubt that there's the flooding and the Gotham Square Garden scene was there, but there are little things that I'm suspicious about. But in any case, it's still fine. The movie, it's like I said, it's something that I'm interested in. These type of movies I am interested in. I like the style. I like to be able to sit down and focus on these movies and just be entertained, but also think a little bit. So that's a success in that regard. Where the movie goes from here, to me, is pretty obvious. They are going to be doing what I believe, anyways, is The Long Halloween. This movie was just an introduction to that, but you can see how there will be a war on crime where Batman teams up with perhaps a Gordon that starts moving up. You can see at the end of the film that the police force, in a sort of alliance with Batman, starts standing up to the corrupt system that has developed over the past 20 years in Gotham City. So now you're seeing an uprising to restore order and to end corruption in Gotham. So you will see Batman team up with Gordon and potentially, who I think is this universe's Harvey Dent in Bella Real, to take on crime against the criminal underworld. But the end effect of that is that the freaks, the rogues gallery that torment Batman, or that has been battling Batman, this is how they show up. And that's certainly how happens in The Long Halloween, that Batman's, and this is touched also on on the Dark Knight trilogy, where Batman's appearance generates escalation and then brings out the freaks. And I think that's what's going to happen here. So the movie could be going that direction. I'm not sure. I am pretty sure that Bella Real is going to be this universe's Harvey Dent. Matt Reeves likes to play on the Spanish language, and Bella Real is could translate to uh, royal beauty or real beauty. And as you know, Harvey Dent, in his conception as a character in the 1940s, was a DA that was obsessed with his looks, and when he becomes Two Face, gets disfigured, and that kind of changes his psychology. So it could be a reference. I'm not sure, but is this just too coincidental that this person had an extended role where literally she approaches Bruce Wayne in the cathedral and tells him, "We got to change this place. I need you by my side. We're gonna, we need to change the status quo of the city." So I think that's where that's going. I think sort of references to other Batman things that have a lot to do with the comics, and I saw a Hush reference for the Edward Elliot. As you guys know, Tommy Elliot is Hush, so there could be something happening there. Perhaps the Riddler's mission is not complete, and then it drives this Edward Elliot character forward to come out and try to finish the job, since Bruce Wayne is technically still alive. Bruce Wayne as a character could potentially move forward to being this sort of public figure. Don't discard that. I see a lot of people saying that they like this sort of hermit Bruce Wayne and that they prefer it that way, but the truth is that this is still a Bruce Wayne that's finding his way in the world. So that part is interesting. I saw references to Bloodhaven, clearly Selena Kyle being Falcone's daughter, and the scratch in the face. There's also another reference. There's probably quite a few more that I can't think of right now, but the movie is certainly rooted in comic book lore at the same time that it's its own story. So that part's good. I think that, now that we start switching to more business side of things, where we start thinking, okay, well, why was this movie made and under what circumstances it was made, you can start realizing that the movie perhaps didn't live up to the expectations that the studio wanted. They probably thought they had a good hit in their hands. I could see why they would feel confident in that, but the reality is that the movie did not drive as much interest. You could say it's for a couple different reasons. Obviously, a darker movie and a detective noir type story is not the most intriguing for a general audience that only shows up to watch MCU films. But the truth is that, yeah, audience is polarized in a direction, so you cannot expect the same type of return, and you can expect even some type of criticism for being different. But at the same time, you're providing an alternative. The problem with me with this movie is that the WB brand is eroded and people don't believe in it as much. They need to be their own fans. And this film was made on the heels of Ben Affleck's Batman, and a lot of people are expecting to see more of that. And the studio has not done a good job in presenting this as a, hey, look, we still got that going, but here is an additional flavor of Batman in the context of the multiverse that you can enjoy. So that part affects the movie. I think that hurt the movie. I think the word of mouth that could have helped from these fans and these followers is not there, because these people have not managed this well enough. This movie was also made for years, has been made to seem as a, wipe the slate clean and we're gonna move on from what you guys were requesting or from what was going on. So they did a really poor job in introducing this project and not taking the sort of bitter taste from people's mouths, where this movie was essentially Ben Affleck's Batman. Like, even the title at some point was The Batman. And I think that in the plot of the movie, I started thinking, well, some of these plot points sound kind of like what Ben Affleck was trying to do. For example, Alfred being a casualty in this war. In this case, he doesn't die, and I hope in Ben Affleck's movie, if it ever happens, he doesn't die. I like that character quite a bit. But that's one thing. But the idea of someone sort of taunting Batman in his personal life, I think that came from the original Batfleck script. So I don't know exactly if this was lifted from that, but I know that this was done for you. This script was worked on for many years, so it's hard to tell. But I think that they did introduce this movie well, and it just shows that WB needs change when you have a popular character like Batman with all the marketing in the world, and you still kind of fall short of their expectations. But that's obviously not good, but that is more on the business side. That this is a movie that perhaps would have been bigger had it been released in a different era, different time. There's also comparisons to Christopher Nolan's um, Dark Knight trilogy. There's some young Batman. There are a couple of things that make it seem similar, but this is also a movie with its own personality, so it's not entirely the same. It's actually quite different in some aspects, so that's not a problem. Now, I think that this movie, what this proves is that there's an audience for the movie. I am interested in continuing to watch, the other corners of this sort of mini pocket universe that exists out there. So I'm interested in it. I would like to see what happens with the Penguin. I would like to see what the other characters look like and what they act like. Um, but who knows if we will see a sequel? I think we should and we will. But the fact that they released that Joker scene without a lot of context, it was not a scene that was in the movie. It's not something that uh, it's an introduction to a character that should have saved for a later movie. It tells me that there's a little bit of desperation and that this movie perhaps came in at a loss, or maybe they make too much money. So the new ownership is not too impressed with it. So that'll be a shame. But let's wait and see what happens. Maybe on the 18th, or next month, they'll have a presentation. Maybe they'll say there'll be a sequel. I don't know at this point, but the movie was not the home run success that they wanted to be, and I can see clearly why. But that being said, there are things you can take from here, and you can build up upon. There's lessons learned. To me, this Batman is a Batman that is like in the comics. You have your Justice League Batman and your main title Batman, but you also have this um, Detective Comics Batman that fights street crime at a street level and solves mysteries. And a lot of people, the suspension of disbelief in the comic continuity world, they assume that it's one and the same, but they're quite different. So to me, the Batman in Matt Reeves' Batman is the Detective Comics Batman. So there is room for all of this stuff, guys. There is room for Ben Affleck. There's room for Robert Pattinson, and Robert Pattinson can be, have his own mini universe of Batman related characters. That's something that will drive people to watch it. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think this is the main course, and this is not something that's just going to drive people, and especially in the current market conditions, to just go crazy in the theaters for these kinds of films. It's a movie that I will enjoy, and I want to see more of, without a doubt. But let's see basically what happens when the changes come. I think Ben Affleck should have his own movie, obviously, and he should be given green card to, or green light to be able to do this sort of James Bondian Batman with a large scale. That will drive people to see it. But this other Batman with Matt Reeves should continue to exist, and you should be able to see the sort of darker take and very edgy take on Batman. I think there's some things that could be improved upon, but overall, while this is not the main course, this is a very nice side dish to provide to your consumers, and it should be part of the offering that DC brings moving forward. The main course, in my opinion, without a doubt, being the Zack Snyder universe, the Snyderverse, so to speak. So you can put all this stuff together. Matt Reeves and Zack Snyder are collaborators, or they're friends at least. So I would assume that even in the Snyderverse, there could be a project that Matt Reeves could take on, by trying to tackle a couple of corners of that universe, and he can continue with this and it's HBO Max and all that stuff. So there's like tons of things you can do with this. So I'm content with the movie. I understand that the discontent of many people of a studio that treats this property as a favorite and doesn't, tries to act like you're just moving on and you're just forgetting about what happened before. So that part I don't really like too much, and it's a little bit upsetting, to be honest with you, especially with all the things that they said in public, where they're just elevating this project and just calling the other projects dead ends, and that kind of behavior does not help the bottom line. So they should be really careful with how they approach this mismanagement. This was costing you, and maybe this project could have been even more successful had they gone about it the right way and set the right expectations and kept people's concerns at ease. So bad management is one thing. There's also the fact that this movie is being released so close to another Batman trilogy that came out not that long ago that was a big hit, and it has some sort of young Batman vibes to it. So that part also could affect it, and the fact that a lot of people were expecting to still see Ben Affleck movie. So you can have all of this, but if the messaging is not the right messaging, then you're gonna get people either confused or annoyed. Multiverse is a concept that some of these people may think I just found some sort of abstract term that I can use to get people to accept whatever I do. Well, that's not everyone lives in a comic book world, and not everyone digests things the same way. So you cannot expect the general audience to just say, okay, yeah, sure, multiverse. Now I have to just accept this. That being said, I think you can move forward with this. Like I said, I enjoyed this film quite a bit. I think that the third act maybe is not the detective noir story that Matt Reeves wanted to portray. I think maybe there were changes that were imposed on him. But overall, the movie as a sort of origin-ish story is interesting. I ended up liking the use of something along the way or something in the way by Nirvana in the movie. It kind of gives it a nice vibe. Reminds me a little bit actually of Man of Steel when Zack Snyder uses Seasons by Soundgarden to explain a part of the story where Clark Kent is finding his way in the world and time is passing. So that was kind of a cool thing to see. We'll see where it goes. Maybe we'll see Hush, Court of Owls, and other things happening there. So it's going to be a while before we see what happens next. A lot of things have to happen at the Warner Brothers Discovery before we get an announcement, I suppose. But it's clear that they didn't use an announcement to boost this film's performance for some reason. Maybe they're not happy with the returns, they're not sure about this universe, so they're just putting everything on hold until they get their house in order. Hopefully that's the case. We'll see what happens next. We'll see where this goes. I think that Matt did a good job here. I think that if there's any mistake or any ball drop to happen with this movie, it's more on the executive side, as it usually is. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next. We'll see a Robin. What's with the drop heads? What's their idea of a Court of Owls? There's Hush. There's Bloodhaven. What's next? We will see. That being said, guys, I think that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the movie. Let me know what you guys think of it. And until then, I guess we'll say goodbye. My next episode should be a Rebel Moon detailed episode where I will talk anything and everything that I can think of regarding Rebel Moon as the movie is starting its film. So I'll catch you quite possibly next Friday. New episodes every Friday moving forward. If you would like me to discuss anything or any particular topic that you'd like me to tackle, I will be glad to do so. But until then, appreciate your time, guys, and I will catch you later. Take care.